would be the most urgent step to take in your opinion?
I think it's maybe to understand better the enemy, and very often we started by thinking, let's use pesticide, acaricide, insecticide, and we can kill them, and then they have reacted like many pathogens, adapting to our immune system and counter-reacting, and the vectors are doing the same thing. And we see a lot of vector resisting. So I think we need to understand better their life cycle, their biology. Sometimes we do not understand their reproduction or their metabolisms, or for some of them, how they manage to escape acaricide, pesticide in terms of detoxification pathways, for instance, and there is a lot of work to be done there. So I think we're understanding the enemy better. And I think now we see more multidisciplinary approaches. We see biologists working with chemists and working maybe with engineers and environmentalists and ecologists. So we try to understand better the vectors. And I guess that is going to create opportunities first for research, and maybe opportunities in new treatment and new controls and new preventions. And that is going to bring new knowledge that we didn't have many years ago when we were not all working together. So I hope the urgency is now, let's understand better the enemy so we can go and win the fight sooner than later.
Another special approach for tick-borne diseases?
Interestingly, I would say yes, in a way. When we compare the different vectors, such as ticks, we know they take a long time to feed. So usually some of them will take a week to feed. And on the other hand, you have the mosquito will feed in a matter of minutes. And in between, you have mites and things like that. We could take a few hours. So the way they are feeding and the way they are doing their life cycles will maybe give us different answers. And we know that we don't approach the insect the same way that we approach the arthropods, like ticks and mites, for instance, because of their life cycle or their relationship they have with the host. If I'm taking blood in a matter of minutes, my interaction with the host is completely different than when I stay 1 week attached to the skin of the animals or the humans. Mm-hmm. And then the fighting is completely different. So for ticks, and like other vectors, we see also sometimes they are adapting, but they're also moving around. What we have difficulties to control is how the ticks are moving between continents and countries. We cannot control all the migrating birds. That is something that for them, there is no borders. And so they can move between Africa and Europe, or Europe and Asia, depending on the season and the corridors. And we know some ticks are now moving north because of changing in temperature, and we can call it global warming or else, but in a way we see on the ground that some tick population are moving and colonizing different countries. And by doing so, sometimes they encounter different pathogens that they didn't have in other countries. And now we have a new interaction, tick pathogens that we didn't have before, and they create new problems in new countries. So yes, there is a few things related to the tick biology that we need to understand. Interestingly, you can see female ticks multiplying their weights by 200, which is something that none of us could do if we were feeding on blood. You can imagine how adaptable to what they have to do is to pump blood as much as possible and concentrate it. And so it's really interesting to understand their biology and work on that and block them again.
Yeah, we have this experience, especially here also in Germany, or at least north of the Alps. So there are ticks before were not endemic here, like here Lomna or the diameter center, and we have them now among us, let's say.
Yeah, it's interesting to see some presentation from the WHO or the FAO in terms of movement of vectors, and I've seen beautiful maps where you can see that the wind sometimes has also an impact when some insects are flown for kilometers and kilometers and could move to borders and pass mountains like that, because they are transported either by animals or by the wind. And that is interesting because working through the OHIR or the WHO, we know that we have now to have a global approach, because if it's not in your country yet, it could come sooner than later, because this vector could adapt and colonize the country, maybe where the listener are today. So it's always interesting to know what's happening in your neighboring countries, because it could happen to you next season. So get ready for it.